it became like, who would want Jim's sweaty tie? Well, first off, I don't sweat when I'm calling games. Yeah. Okay, guy, calm down.
Speak for yourself.
You're like, yeah, I'm sure you don't sweat at all. It was meant to be a quiet gesture that no one would know about. But once it got hijacked, I thought, you know what? I'm not going to put that burden on anyone where a media guy is going to make fun of it and belittle the kid and take that moment away from him. So I opted not to do it anymore. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into Monkey Knife Fight's National Championship Preview Show. I'm Dan Watkins. Joining me is Rotowire's Nick Whalen. Nick, any parting words for Coach K?
Good riddance. That's all I got to say. No, I think I was on record last week saying that I weirdly was not rooting for Duke, but I would have been okay with this continuing for one more game. It would have made a lot of sense, I think, for Coach K to take center stage in the national championship game one last time. But man, I'm sure you watched that full game, probably both games on Saturday. We could not have asked for a more back and forth, competitive game throughout, where with a minute left, you still had no idea who was going to win that basketball game. So I did not have, a ton to say about Coach K specifically. I thought I was kind of hoping we would get more of like a post-game showmanship display from Coach K on his way out. He was pretty quiet. He got off the court pretty quickly. I thought maybe he would address the crowd, maybe try to shush everybody. But it was actually kind of crazy how quickly it ended. Obviously everybody's aware of the storyline throughout the game. And, all of a sudden there's 10 minutes left, there's 5 minutes left, there's 2 minutes left. And then it becomes clear, with about 30 seconds left, that North Carolina is going to win this game. And obviously you knew that it could have been Coach K's last time ever, on the court, last time ever on the sideline in the NCAA tournament, but it all ended so quickly.
Yeah, I would. He probably had reservations on Bourbon Street somewhere. Had to get out of there to those. But I love the visual of him and his wife on the back of the golf cart, just slowly going away from everybody.
Yeah.
Did you catch the interview with Tracy Wolfson, like in the hallway in the like outside the locker room, where she was just like, on behalf of everybody, I want to thank you for college basketball. And he was like, oh, you're welcome.
Yeah, right. That interview is putting it nicely. That was basically just her saying like, hey, thanks. And no response other than you're welcome.
Yeah. But
quintessential Coach K. I saw the Baycott interview too, where he gave him like a weird like stomach rub.
Yep.
And told him that he's the real player of the year. Like, okay, sure. That's all well and good.
And then
but
yeah, which is just
I thought he'd have something more elaborate planned.
Yeah, guess not. But I heard this on the radio Sunday night driving home, and they were like debating, will we see him on the sideline again? Do we see him with the Olympic team, or do we see him try to make a run in the NBA for like a year or two? What do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, if you had to handicap it, it would be like, I don't know, 30-1 that he ever coaches an NBA game. I mean, he has had his opportunities obviously throughout the year, and there are definitely, if he said, I want to coach in the NBA, there are teams that would line up and give him a shot. The Sacramento Kings, for example, would be more than happy to have Coach K, almost more for like the spectacle than anything else. Is like people that will attract attention. That makes your franchise extremely relevant if Coach K is your coach. But no, I don't see that happening. I do think, and it's pretty obvious. It became obvious, I think, during the first loss to North Carolina in his final game at Cameron, that he still feels these losses. I think he's very aware of his legacy, and I think he probably had a plan of how he wanted to go out, and it certainly did not involve losing to North Carolina twice in the span of a few weeks in like massively crushing defeats on the national stage. So part of me still thinks like there is this kind of insatiable fire that I think he thought he was going to ride off into the sunset with a national championship, or at least not by losing to his arch rival twice. And you do wonder, it's like, does he need to kind of satisfy that or avenge these losses? Because again, he's very aware of what his perception is, and not that he's scrolling through Twitter as he's going, falling asleep on Saturday night, but I'm sure he's very aware that everybody's saying like, yeah, you were a great coach. Yeah, you're one of the best ever. But, for the next, who knows, 50, 100 years, we're still going to say, but you lost to North Carolina twice in your final two games.
Yeah. I mean, UNC fans and that program have bragging rights forever. It does not matter. I mean, his 5 national titles, 13 trips to the Final Four. None of that matters because he lost to North Carolina in the Final Four and the final game at Cameron Indoor. And Field Yates tweeted this out Saturday night. North Carolina handed Coach K his first ever loss as Duke's head coach in 1980. It also handed Coach K a loss in his final game at Cameron Indoor, and it defeated Coach K in his final game as Duke's head coach. I mean, that is just so sweet for North Carolina fans. And there was a lot of hype, as you mentioned, going into that game last week, and very rarely do games live up to the hype, and that one did. But I feel like it kind of took a little bit away from this one tonight. We got Kansas and North Carolina, an 8 seed in North Carolina going up against number 1 Kansas. North Carolina is looking to be just the second 8 seed ever to win a national title, and that was 85 Villanova. Kentucky made it, I think, in 2014 when they lost to UConn. But this one is this is going to be a great game tonight. Don't get me wrong, but the hype is just not quite there with Duke being out.
All right. Well, first of all, we did not need to bring up that 2014 Kentucky team. I don't think we need to get into how they got to that game against UConn necessarily, but that is true. They were an 8 seed. And you're totally right, though. That game felt like the national championship. I was in a few group chats with some buddies during the game, and like the way that they were filming the game, like they were using those weird camera angles where all of a sudden like the camera's like tracking a player at his feet.
Yeah.
Like just seeing everything in the dome, like just the scale of playing in an NFL stadium. The broadcast, like everything felt like that was the national championship game. And I think you're 100% right. Like, we're not going to come on here and be like, yeah, this game tonight's going to be a huge letdown. I'm looking forward to it. Kansas is a deserving opponent. North Carolina's had an awesome run, but to me, it's impossible to imagine tonight living up to the game that we saw Saturday night.
Yeah, I think CBS was fully planning on having more eyes on Saturday night than they are tonight.
Yeah.
Like, let's see what the ratings show. And because I know you're curious about this and you've been wondering, Eric Church did not have a concert scheduled for tonight, so the church choir off the hook. His next concert actually is scheduled for Saturday night in New Orleans. So if North Carolina does pull off this upset one more time, it could be a fun week in North Carolina and in New Orleans for Eric Church fans. And then I was going to start the show today with by just ripping Jim Nantz for his for a tradition that apparently he hasn't done now for 6 years, which is when he would give his tie to the most outstanding player.
Wait, he stopped doing that?
Stopped doing it. He hasn't done it since 2016. I was fully prepared to go off on this as just the greatest thing ever in sports. I mean, just a broadcaster just throwing themselves into the into the spotlight there. But no, he went on Robbie Hummel's podcast last year with Jeff Goodman, the Field of 68, and he basically described why he didn't want to do it anymore. And he said it became like, who would want Jim's sweaty tie? Well, first off, I don't sweat when I'm calling games. Yeah, okay, guy, calm down.
Speak for yourself.
I'm sure you don't sweat at all. It was meant to be a quiet gesture that no one would know about. But once it got hijacked, I thought, you know what? I'm not going to put that burden on anyone where a media guy is going to make fun of it and belittle the kid and take that moment away from him. So I opted not to do it anymore. Jim, no one was belittling the kid except for you. So, I mean,
I think that's a direct shot at Pardon My Take. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't like, this was like, I look forward to the awkwardness of this every year, but apparently it hasn't happened in 5 years now. So it just shows how much I've been paying attention.
Yeah. I have to look back. I wonder who got the last ever Jim Nantz tie.
It was Ryan.
What is that thing worth? That's got to be worth hundreds of dollars.
It was Ryan Archidiacono.
Wow.
From Villanova.
I'm sure he has that framed in his living room now.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know if Jim's doing something sneaky behind the scenes where he's giving something like, I don't know, his jacket, maybe.
He's doing something.
Probably. But anyways, moving on here. Let's get into some of these players here and some of these props we got here on MKF. And let's start with Brady Manick. 16.5 is his more or less for points tonight. He's averaging 15.2 this season. He's averaging an even 20 in the tournament. But I feel like that number is a little bit misleading because most of it came in the first weekend. He's cooled off quite a bit since getting ejected in that round of 32 game against Baylor. Can he reach 17 points in this one with Jalen Wilson, who's been playing great on defense on him all night?
Man, this is tough. MKF has been right on it with these lines. I'm telling you, there are times where we'll talk NBA and I'll feel pretty good about, and a more or less, but almost all of these have been spot on. And I think I'm inclined to go less. It's a little bit anecdotal, but you watch these championship games over the year and they always feel like teams come out a little tight. It's like you hear the shooting in that cavernous, NFL stadium throws teams off. Like these games tend to be lower scoring. You have time to scout. Everybody's, going as hard as you possibly can on the defensive end. And that's kind of what college basketball is in the first place. So I'm almost inclined to go less on just about every scoring prop, just because I feel like this is going to be more of a grinded out type of game. Kansas very comfortable playing that style. And even in their game against Villanova, like it felt like everything was going right for Kansas, but it wasn't exactly a, run and gun type of style. They're happy to slow it down. And I think North Carolina would certainly prefer to play faster. We'll see if Kansas allows that. But I mean, with Manek, he's very much 3-point dependent, right? The reason that he even got to 14 points against Duke were a couple of like really quick, kind of coming around screen, catch and shoot threes that went down late in that second half. Both of them were huge shots against Duke. But if he's not hitting those, against a Kansas team that has really good size, someone like David McCormick patrolling the paint, I don't really see him getting to 17.5. So I'm going to go less on Brady Manek.
Yeah, I'm going less as well. It's just too high of a number here. He's cooled off, as I mentioned, since that first weekend. And I'm kind of expecting North Carolina to struggle tonight. That's just the way I'm feeling. So that I think Kansas is going to roll with this one. Let's move on here and let's talk about Ochai Agbaji. 17.5 is his more or less for Kansas. He's averaging close to 19 points this season, just 14 in the tournament though. But he had a great semifinal against Villanova. He went 6 of 7 from 3-point range on his way to 21 points. Now he scored a total of 70 points in this tournament, but 33 of them have come in the last 3 halves since the second half of that game against Miami. I'm going to ride the hot hand here, Nick. I'm going more. How about you?
I'm kind of going to employ the same logic with Manek and just say, I think, he could end up being the leading scorer for Kansas and score like 15 or 16. I think it's going to be that type of game where it's slowed down. You have multiple contributors. So I'm going to go less on Agbaji. I mean, 6 of 7 from 3, that's not happening again. He was 4 of 14 from 3 over their previous 4 games in the NCAA tournament. And that counts a 2 for 2 performance against Miami. And like you said, he's played his last like 6 quarters of basketball have been fantastic, but the first 12 in this tournament were not all that great. So I think he comes in somewhere in the middle. So I'm going to go 2 for 2 on the less so far.
Then you got Caleb Love for North Carolina, the guard. We have 2 props for him on MKF. We have 17.5 points as his more or less and 3.5 assists. He's averaging 16 points this season and even 20 though in the tournament where he he exploded against Duke with 28 points. He had 30 against UCLA in the Sweet 16, 23 against Marquette. So he's been over this number quite a few, 3 out of 5 games. And then when it comes to assists, he's averaging about 3.5, which is his prop total tonight. Just 2.5 in the tournament, though. How do you feel about Caleb Love?
I think we got to go more on Caleb Love. Just the way that he was hunting shots, not only against Duke, but even against St. Peter's and even against UCLA. I mean, he has 33 3-point attempts over the last 3 games. 5 of his last 6, he's taken at least 10 3-pointers. And they're not always going to go down. I mean, you look at the last 2 games alone, he's just 5 of 20 from 3. But if you've taken that many, if the ball's in your hand that often, it really, this offense for North Carolina against Duke, it just kind of turned into like the 2 guards doing everything. Baycott is finishing around the rim and grabbing rebounds. Manek is just kind of running baseline to baseline, looking for threes. And it's Caleb Love and RJ Davis doing really all the playmaking and all the initiating. So it's worked so far. Based on what you just said about Kansas, I think maybe you think that luck could run out. That's definitely a possibility going up against this Kansas defense, but I think they're going to keep playing that style for better or for worse.
Yeah, I'm very comfortable taking the more here with Caleb Love, just because if they're going to go down, Caleb Love's going to go down swinging, and the volume's going to be there. And there's nothing more that I hate watching a game, especially when I'm betting on it, than like having an under on something or a less, and it's just getting closer and closer, and you're just sweating it out. So like I kind of did in the Villanova Kansas game. I took the under there, and that came back to bite me. So I'm going to go more on Caleb Love. We got a couple secondary props here. Let's start with Jalen Wilson, 8.5 rebounds. He's averaging 7.5 for the season, close to 11 in the tournament, though. He's been a sneaky monster on the glass, Nick. Can he keep that up tonight and get to 9 boards?
Man, I think so. I mean, you're looking at in the NCAA tournament since that first round beatdown against Texas Southern, where the game was basically over midway through the first half. He's got 14, 11, 11, and 12 rebounds. And, you're going up against a big man in Baycott who honestly is vacuuming up rebounds at an insane rate. What do you have, 21? I think the other night against Duke. Like I really had not thought of him as that type of rebounder until the second half of this season. So you have a guy in Baycott who can certainly stand in your way and prevent you from getting to that number. But I think we just kind of have to follow the stats in this situation. I mean, Wilson's playing a ton of minutes. He played almost every minute against Villanova, played almost every minute in that Providence game in the Sweet 16. And I think we're, obviously they're going to need him for 35 plus in this one. So as long as he stays out of foul trouble, which he has been able to do these last few games, he was in foul trouble their first couple games of the tournament, but as long as he can avoid that, I think he goes more.
Yeah. And if Baycott's limited at all tonight, I think Jalen Wilson's going to feast on the board. So I'm very comfortable with the more here. Moving on, let's talk about Armando Baycott. His more or less is 13.5 rebounds, just an absurd line here, but there's been no reason to take the less with him going through this tournament, except for the injury. He says he's ready to go, good to go. So he's going to suit up tonight. Can he get to 14 rebounds?
Yeah, all-time quote from Baycott when asked about going back into the game against Duke. He said he's, quote, just had to thug it out, which I never heard that term. Amazing term. Something that I will probably try to use, at least in my own daily life, probably to less effectiveness. But yeah, the ankle's something to worry about, right? It feels like he came back in and they won the game and everybody just pretended like it didn't happen. Like that was a really bad looking ankle roll. At first, I mean, I think he thought it was more severe than it initially was. Like he could not put any weight on it at first. I don't think there was any chance that he thought he was coming back into that game, until he had it evaluated and was able to kind of jog it off a little bit in the tunnel area. But I'm sure you've rolled your ankle at some point in your life. Pretty much everybody has. It's not exactly an injury that feels great the next day or the day after that. So there's going to be some discomfort. Obviously, they have a world-class training staff. I'm sure he'll have a brace. I don't know, maybe you can get like a cortisone shot or something. Like I'm not worried about him, not like playing like 18 minutes in this game because he's limited, but it's something that's going to be in the back of your mind. I think to me, I would be more worried about what that does for like his scoring. Like how much confidence do you have? If you're catching it back to the basket, do you still feel like you can make the same moves? You can pivot the same way? That to me would worry me a little bit. But when we're talking rebounds, that's just that's something that's just in his nature. I don't think the ankle necessarily affects that all that much. And you look at the last 4 games, beginning with the win over Baylor in the round of 32, 16 boards, 15 boards, 22 boards, 21 boards against a Duke team that has a 7-2 center in Mark Williams. So I think this is actually a pretty friendly number. And as you could probably guess, I'm leaning toward the more.
How high would that number have to get for you to back off it? 15?
I don't know. I mean, I think, 15.5. That probably would make me, at least at that point, it becomes a 50-50.
Yeah, I'm going to go more on this 13.5 number, scoop it up while I can before it probably will jump tonight once he's officially. I don't think he's officially been activated or they've officially said he's playing, but once that happens, I'm sure that number's probably going to climb up a little bit more. So
it'll get that Watkins Whalen boost.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't even have a fun nickname for that. I was going to say something really bad, but never mind. Moving up. The thug it out quote, definitely deserving of a belly rub. So that was a great quote there. No. He will have to deal with David McCormick tonight as well, who had 25 and 9, a monster semifinal game against Villanova, but I'm not too worried with the way Baycott's playing on the glass. So, all right, Nick, prediction time. The line is Kansas -4. The total is set at 152. Who's cutting down the nets tonight in New Orleans?
I think I'm with you, and I think it's Kansas. I looking back at like my horrific failed bracket that was doomed really from the start, I kind of look back and I'm like, why did I not put more faith in Kansas? And obviously a lot of the reason that they're here is like their path developed really quickly into a super friendly, road to New Orleans. But even looking back, if things had gone a little bit differently, I just vastly underrated this Kansas team. They've been super consistent as always. Throughout the Big 12 season, they were super consistent leading up to the tournament. And now here they are in the national championship game. And they just have the characteristics of teams that not only make it this far, but also win the tournament, right? I mean, you have multiple dynamic scoring options. You have like the classic college senior big man in McCormick, who is like a top 40 recruit, but was never really on the one and done radar. Like you need a guy like that. It's very rare to win with just a bunch of freshmen and sophomores or just a bunch of older players. Like they have that perfect mix with Abaji coming back. Like they have the feel of a national championship team. Not to discount North Carolina. They could very well win this game. I think the 4-point spread in favor of Kansas is spot on, because for as well as North Carolina has played, there is kind of this aspect of like, how long can they keep this up? Like, the way that these two guards especially are playing, and with the Baycott injury thrown in, like this isn't a Cinderella run by any means. It's the University of North Carolina. They're ineligible to be called a Cinderella, but when you see that little 8 next to North Carolina, with each passing game, you just kind of have that thought in the back of your mind. Like, a couple months ago, we didn't even think this team was going to make the tournament. Like, how long can they keep this up? And I don't know. You mentioned that UConn team earlier in the show. I think we had the same thought about them. And then we looked up at the end of Monday night and they were national champions. So I don't have a super strong lean. I wouldn't like lock in Kansas, but I'll probably put a little bit of sprinkle on the Jayhawks tonight.
Yeah, I'm going Kansas, as I kind of hinted at earlier on in the show. Kansas always was my default national championship pick when I was making a bracket. But the past couple of years, I've stayed away from them because they've just disappointed the past couple of years. But here they are in the Natty tonight, and I think they're going to cut the nets down. Bill Self's team goes 7 or 8 deep, and I think that's going to wear out North Carolina tonight, who, they have the Iron 5 or whatever. And if Baycott, like that halftime, I'm sure – I don't know. I'm guessing halftime's probably a little longer than normal in the national championship. So I'm guessing that he might stiffen up in the second half there, allowing Kansas to pull away. North Carolina, this is going to be close at halftime. I think 1 or 2 points at half, and then Kansas is going to pull away. And I'm going with 81-74 final. Jayhawks cutting down the nets in New Orleans tonight. So give me
81-74. Okay. Is that like right on the total? Am I adding that up wrong?
It's 3 over. 3
over. Okay. I'm going to go under on the total for sure. I like I said, these games just tend to be tense. You have a lot of bad shooting usually early on. I think it's going to be close though, right? Like I think we could agree on that. Even if we're both in on Kansas, I don't think this is going to be a game where they're opening up like a 20-point lead early in the second half. I think it's going to be back and forth. And it could resemble. I mean, hopefully it resembles Duke, North Carolina on Saturday, where I didn't look this up, but like, did either team until the end like lead by more than 5 or 6 the entire way? It just felt like neither team ever gained an advantage to the point where you thought, oh, they might run away with this.
No, I think it was right there the entire way down the stretch. So, all right, yeah. Well, that's going to do it for us this week on MKF. We'll be back throughout the month of April and into the spring. We got some baseball stuff, NBA playoffs. And I think we're even going to do some NFL draft stuff, which I'm really looking forward to. And John will be back for those shows because, well, he couldn't join us today because I'm just going to put him on blast. He's at Augusta. He is watching.
Typical.
He is watching.
Country club kid.
Yeah. Watching practice rounds at the Masters. So follow him for Tiger Woods news. So I'm expecting him to break anything somehow. I'm sure he snuck a phone in somehow that he can break protocol and break that news. So Nick, where can everybody follow you?
You can follow me at Whalen, WHA1EN on Twitter. Like you said, follow John for golf updates. You can follow me for Rashad McCants tweets throughout the game tonight. Despite me thinking that Kansas will win, I think deep down I'll be pulling for North Carolina.
All right, very good. And you can follow me at Dan Watkins Radio. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on our YouTube page.